Well, it is 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Greg Williams, and I will be your host for today's webinar, Social Media for Trainers with Dr. Jane Bozarth. Today's program is part of our ISD Now series brought to you by the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, also known as UMBC. UMBC is a public university located in Baltimore, Maryland. We have been ranked by the U.S. News and World Report as the #1 up-and-coming university for several years in a row. We are also featured on a segment on CBS's 60 Minutes, who said that UMBC is, quote, one of the most innovative schools in the country. Today's webinar is sponsored by UMBC's online graduate program in instructional systems development. For more information, you can visit our website at umbc.edu/ISD. Now this is the part you've all been waiting for. It's very exciting, the administrative announcements. If you have any technical difficulties, such as audio, you can please call the GoToWebinar support line at 800-263-6317. If you're having trouble hearing the audio, it's always a good idea to log off then log back in. That takes care of most problems. I strongly advise everyone to close any other web browsers or software applications that you may have open right now, since this may impact the quality of the webinar for you. You will have the ability to ask questions using the question and the chat functions. We will monitor both those functions. You will not have the ability to speak. We have hundreds of people online today. With so many people online, we will do our best to answer all your questions, but it's possible we might not get to everyone. Jane has agreed to answer questions as we go along, so please post your question in the question dialog box or in the chat box. Since this is a webinar on social media, you can use the hashtag ISD Now to tweet. Again, that's ISD Now if you're a tweeter. This webinar will be recorded. We will email you the link as soon as the video is posted. Slides from today's webinar will not be available to attendees. However, Dr. Bozarth has agreed to share information by providing website resources instead of the slides. We will share these websites links with you later. So let me introduce our presenter, Dr. Jane Bozarth. Dr. Bozarth is the e-learning coordinator for the state of North Carolina. She is the author of several books, including Social Media for Trainers, Better Than Bullet Points, the upcoming Show Your Work, and more. She also writes the monthly Nuts and Bolts column for the e-learning Solutions magazine. She's a popular webinar and conference speaker. Dr. Bozarth and her husband live in Durham, North Carolina. So Jane, this is the part where I hand over the presenter's wand to you.
Yay!
So if you hang on, I will go ahead and do that.
Okay.
There you go.
And I'm assuming we can see my screen, is that correct?
I can see the hip, happy professor screen, yes.
All right, welcome everybody. I'm Jane, and the reason I don't give out the slides, sometimes I have permission to use something in a presentation or sometimes in a book. I reference a lot of live sites and real programs, and I've posted a Digo link several times today. I'll post it again before we're through. You can go there and get to the actual programs rather than just copies of my slides. I don't always have permission to distribute or otherwise publish those, but this will be more helpful anyway. So you can get to other things I reference, sites I reference, that kind of thing, just by going to that one Digo link. Everything is aggregated there. And I'm starting off with this slide. I used to start with it to surprise people that this was going on, and now I use it to ask you to look in the upper left corner at the date. I think that there's still kind of conversation that this sort of thing is new, and really we are moving upwards of 10 years now. This guy wanted to reach a bigger audience. He felt that there were more people who would enjoy his class. He started offering it on MySpace. Of course, the university flipped out. The registrar's office didn't like it. The bursar's office didn't like it. But I think we're moving past the day when this is new, because heavens, I barely remember MySpace. I'm not even old enough for that. So what I'm going to do today, I have done university work. I teach a graduate course for George Mason every fall. I use Blackboard. Sometimes I use the tools in Blackboard. Often I use external other tools for reasons I won't elaborate on. You probably know what they are. But, you know, because I don't always know what everybody in an audience, especially a big audience, has access to, I choose examples that use public tools. So I've got stuff from Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and sites like that. I recognize that you may be using something different in your own work and in-house. I invite you to try to generalize from what you see today. For when I give examples, very often there are many tools that would do exactly what I'm showing. I just needed to pick something to show you. So I'm Jane. I'm with the state of North Carolina. I am almost wrapping up a career here. I've been here so long. So I've been here a good while. I've been doing this a long time. My doctorate was in training and development. My dissertation was on communities of practice and the dynamics of online communities. So that was, or the dynamics of communities. So that speaks to my interest in social learning and using social tools. I'm also always broke because I work for government. I know I'll never have any money. I never have a budget. So I got marginally famous 10 years or so ago for managing to do everything on the cheap. And that's a lot of what I've written about. The new book, of course, is Show Your Work, the payoffs and how-tos of working out loud, which is basically another way of making what we do more explicit and sharing it with one another. So today we're going to talk a good bit about how we can extend our practice. I'm not necessarily suggesting that we've got things that are going to replace what you're already doing. So we'll start from there and see where we go. So first of all, if you would please just type in chat one of these letters about social media and social tools. From I don't get it, I go to Twitter, everybody's talking about what their cats had for breakfast. I go to YouTube, I see cats riding Roombas, I don't get it. B is I have accounts, I know the passwords, I check in now and again. C is I'm pretty actively engaged. I do a lot of this. I go to my sites. I am frequently online. I participate a good deal. Or D, I am what we would call a content creator. I engage a lot. I do a lot of stuff. I drive discussion. Where would you put yourself on that? And I would say over the years, I'm seeing fewer and fewer A's in the group. That used to be maybe a quarter, and now it's more like 5 or 10%. So we've got a lot of you moving up toward the end of the scale. Well, one of the things I will tell you is if you're interested in making more or heavier use of these tools in your work, we really need to try to help you get up to that level of the C on the spectrum, and if we, or the continua, and if we can try to get you up to the D. One of the challenges with social media is that it is a content-eating machine. And it cries out for people who are online a lot, who do a lot of regular updates, who do that as a part of their day and a part of their habit and a part of their work. And if it's not you, we need to figure out who it can be. It may be your students. It may be people around you. Greg and some folks who help him do a phenomenal job with the social media accounts for this organization. So, you know, for the university. So it's pretty amazing to see how much they're able to do. And I think he'll agree when I say that all this stuff is easy to set up and it's harder to sustain. You know, you have to be online a lot, check in a lot. Those of you who have taught online courses, say on a Blackboard or a Moodle that has a discussion board, you know you have to check in pretty often to keep on top of what's going on. So let's see what we can do to kind of help you move along as we go. So when I talk about this stuff, I tend to look at tools and to like tools for the reasons you see here. I like that I don't have to jump through a whole lot of hoops, that I don't have to negotiate all the time, that I can upload my own stuff without having special skills or programming knowledge, that I can circumvent a lot of what used to be the bureaucracy. Of course, the bureaucracy doesn't like that, right? That's where we get some of the resistance. But when we talk about Web 2.0, it kind of moves us past the age of the guy with the server and the FTP software who uploads stuff for us. So in my view, social media is content that invites and allows others to contribute. Would you say that's a shift from traditional approaches to teaching or educating or training? Yeah, it's a shift for many of us. You know, we are very, very good, and I'm among you. I mean, I'm one of your peers. We are very, very good at creating, generating, and distributing content. It's what we do. It's what we're good at. It's this business of how to invite conversation back that can be a challenge. Now, one thing for trainers and teachers and professors. I don't mean to lump all of you wrongly, so let me categorize everybody. One of the challenges for us, I can ask you a question, you'll answer me. That is the traditional sort of Socratic method. I say something to Greg, and Greg responds. I say something to all of you, and you all respond to me. Getting people to interact in a more familiar way or more conversational way with me or with each other, I think, is our bigger challenge when we talk about some of these tools, or we talk about some of these approaches. But, I see a lot of benefits. Now, I am focused mostly on the workplace. I see a lot of benefits when we talk about social learning and formal learning, when we talk about how we can build relationships, we can build a sense of community in the workplace or the world of organizations. I often hear about wanting to transfer knowledge, and help people share expertise. Would you add anything to my list of benefits to using these tools or using more social approaches? Yeah, increased engagement. All right, and so the next question, and yeah, I would say, Patricia, you're right. You can update stuff. I should have said that on the last slide. I don't have to go through 6 people to get a date changed on an online calendar, right? Adults like to be experts. So what about engagement? Why do we think that's some sort of inherently good thing? I don't, you know what, Cindy, spell check is off when we do these things, and I hope you forgive me too. I've already posted ukulele music in the chat, so I can't really call anybody else out for making a mistake. So it increases retention and increases motivation. We hope it will encourage people to engage with content and each other in a different way. Hope they will take that away with them, all right? Do I have any of this from you? Let's get it out of the way. Of course. All right. Let's make fun of them now. We're going to assume none of them are here. You tell IT you want something, they say, whoa, no. You tell legal you want something, they say no. You tell HR. I had a boss. I work in HR. My last boss, he wanted us to be cutting edge and state of the art as long as we weren't first. And so I learned to lie to him. If I told him Tennessee or Georgia or South Carolina were doing something, or Virginia, then he was fine with it. So, do what you have to do. Finance doesn't like it, even if it's free, they find a reason not to. I mean, I think we all have those challenges, and for me, the issue is figuring out how to circumvent it rather than just continue to beat my head on the wall, or how to negotiate, or how to speak their language, or how to find solutions that aren't so scary. So for us, we need this. We need things we can maintain on ourselves. We need things that are collaborative. We need things we can, as somebody said a moment ago, we can adjust. And we need things that are easy to put into our existing processes and procedures and practice. We don't need to fall back into that problem where we reinvented everything as e-learning 10 years ago, and then that didn't quite work like we thought it would. The thing is, the learners want it to be fun. They want it to be engaging. They want it to be fast. They want to get access to what they need right away. They want personalized. So sometimes getting these dots to line up can be a challenge. And frankly, they may not always want the collaboration we think they want. Sometimes I just want to look something up. I don't need to have a chat about it, right? I just need to get to some information. So when we look at traditional view of training in the workplace, or a formal instruction, whatever it is, if it's a course that's offered 2 days a week, if it's a course that's offered online in a semester format, this is what usually happens, especially in the workplace. Tell me if this looks familiar to you. Now, I work for state government, as I've told you, so I get people who may come in and actually stay 20 or 30 years. So we get this guy who comes to work, and he works a few days, and then he gets into orientation, and that's 2 days in a classroom. He works a couple of years, and he gets promoted to supervisor, and we send him to intro to supervision. He works 3 or 4 years. He finishes a degree, or he gets promoted to middle management. We send him to a leadership course that's 6 days long. And his whole career goes that way. It's a series of events punctuated by some days in class, and we could say the same for university-level students. They're in a situation for a limited period of time or a limited number of days. This should look very familiar to you. But where does a lot of learning really happen? Is learning really happening in those 40 days that this employee spent in a classroom in the course of 25 years, right? How do people learn? how did this guy, let's take this guy for an example. How did this guy learn to be good at this job? He got promoted twice. He stayed 20 years. He must have been. Okay, so what happens while he's doing? What's happening on the job? He's watching who? Right? So people look at each other. They watch what each other are doing. That's how we learn social norms. That's how we learn to move in the world, is by watching how other people do it. It's how we learn not to get beat up every day at school when we're kids. It's how we learn not to get letters from the homeowners association, which is my goal, by the way. Our goal, our yard care is such that we don't want letters from the homeowners association. Right, so we're talking. The question right now, I see a lot of yes buts. I'm getting to it. My question right now is, how do people learn from each other, or how do people learn in between these events? They're talking to supervisors, they're talking to peers. Even if they're online students, they're in chat discussions in between classes and what have you. So I would just say a lot of real learning is what's happening in these spaces that may not be in the 2 hours they're in class with you, or the 1 hour they're in a webinar with you, or just the term that they're enrolled with you. And I think one of the things I like best about these tools is that they help get into these spaces a little bit better. So when we talk about, back to the comments some of you were making about online, what are some traditional sort of things you do now that help people interact with each other? And it doesn't have to involve technology. Some of you may be teaching face-to-face or doing training face-to-face. What kinds of things do we see that are ways we get people to engage with each other? Who does group discussions? Discussion boards, okay, group exercises, doing simulations. Anybody do games? Role plays, skill practice? All right, so my point is we're doing a lot of this stuff already. Here are some things I had. You may have some things to add to it. Asking questions, doing Q&A. So what I would suggest is that we can do these things using other tools now. We have other ways to do it. We have ways to do it that maybe aren't quite so formally built into a schedule. So let's take a look at that. So what I would like is for you to leave today with some idea for how to use something, one of these things. So let's take a look, and it may be everything from supporting a traditional class to just doing a simple activity. First of all, who's using blogs? Do I have any bloggers? Okay. How often are you blogging? Those of you who are saying yes. And let me say, for people who have privacy concerns, security concerns, IT that makes things challenging, well, if you're blogging weekly, good for you. Good for you. I used to be better, I admit it. Once I found Twitter, my blogging fell way off. You know, here's the thing. If you're not familiar with blogging platforms, they really are kind of idiot-proof web pages. And I say that, and as soon as I say it, somebody builds a better idiot. For the most part, it's a way to have a web page that looks very professional, and it's not very much work. You don't need to know all the programming. You don't need to do any code. You don't need all the stuff we used to have. You can have pictures. You can have links. You can have video. You can have a web page. Basically, it's a post and respond comment. You know, an author or two or three may publish a topic, and then people can comment. You can share that role. You can spread it among your students if you need to, but it's mostly kind of a call and respond. But for those of you with some security concerns, this is as social tools go, this is about as tight as you're going to get. You can password protect who can see a blog. You can control who posts to it or who comments on it. It's the reason a lot of K-12 schools, elementary schools, use blogging because it's a good tool for the kids and the teachers and the parents, and it doesn't pose quite as many threats. You need to use common sense, but it's not such a threat to organizations. And if you have SharePoint, which I didn't ask you, sometimes they don't tell you that SharePoint comes with blogs and wikis. Sometimes IT doesn't tell people that. Sometimes they just don't turn them on, and you just may need to ask. It's not really a list of apps. I was just showing some kind of free tools that are out there. I don't recommend products, and as soon as I do, they get sold. You know, WordPress is popular. EduBlogs is popular among the education community. Blogger is a Google product. But if you want private stuff, internal stuff, you start looking at private tools, or you start looking at things that cost money. So let's take a look at an example of using a blog to solve a real problem. Several years ago, the Charlotte, North Carolina, that's Mecklenburg County, library system recognized that it had a problem. It found that the librarians were good with traditional librarian stuff. The librarians could say, yes, we have that book, come with me, I'll help you find it. They weren't so good if a kid needed a digital image for a report, if somebody wanted to do some online database searching, that kind of thing. And so the IT director and the training director sat down and made a list of 23 things these people really needed to be more either fluent in or adept in to do their jobs, to meet the needs of the public. Libraries struggle. I don't need to tell you, in the day of e-readers and Amazon, libraries are not doing as well as they used to, so they're trying to remain relevant in their communities. It was a business need. Now, the IT director was part of this project, and she could have gotten a site built, a portal built or something. But they decided if people were going to need to learn about these tools, then they needed to use the tools to learn about them. So they used Blogger, a free blog, and they set up an online course called 23 Things. Staff had 9 weeks to complete it. Staff began by setting up their own blogs on which they tracked their progress. Now, they didn't have 1 million students. They had, less than 100, so somebody could keep up with that. These are what the things look like, and you have a link to this program in your materials that I've posted, and I'll post again before we're through. So it gave people nice, easy bites. Read a blog and find out about the program. Set up a blog and register it with us. Explore Flickr. And the assignments look like this. This is thing number 20. There's a very quick 2-minute intro to YouTube. There's a couple of paragraphs about YouTube and why it's relevant to you as a librarian. And then each of the things have a discovery exercise. So it's not just go wander around YouTube until you run into the porn and the nasty comments. Go find something you want to have on your own blog and do that. So it broke it into very nice, discrete little pieces, not threatening, not crazy. They could do it together or separate. The library didn't care as long as it got done. The social part of this came when they commented on each other's blogs and responded to each other's work. So it wasn't really so much discussion boards as they went as it was, you've got a blog and enable the comments, and then each of you comment on each other's work. What do you think? I see Rowan's comment. Khan Academy is great, and I love it. I don't know that it's very social. I think it's a great way of publishing, which is something else we can talk about today. What do you think of 23 Things? What do you think of 23 Things? Okay. You do have a link to it so you can see it. Now, I will say they had a phenomenal completion rate on this. I think it was upwards of in the 90%. Okay. It's bite-sized, but the point being, this is on a blog. It's probably not how you're used to seeing a blog. You can, again, remember I said it was a web page. You can host a whole initiative this way if you need to. All right. All right. Here's another example. This is an example of the instructor and the students each having blogs that they're using for some reason. Now, you don't have to do it this way. The instructor could have done this, say, on another tool and then had the kids have blogs, but he did it this way. This is about teaching English in Japan. The instructor is an American who is teaching Japanese in Japan. I mean, he's teaching English in Japan to students who want to be English teachers. So he's an American teaching English in Japan. The students are Japanese and want to be English teachers. He has a blog, and each of the students have blogs. So he has a blog, and he posts weekly stuff there. They have face-to-face meetings. They have some inter-session stuff. Each of the students has a blog, and they've set it up with fake names. He knows who they are, but they don't have to divulge their real names if they don't want to. So this was their last day of class. He asked them to pair up and walk around and talk about their strengths and weaknesses as English teachers. As you know, people don't argue with their own data. If you can get students to explicitly state what they feel they need to work on, that's much more likely to happen. You know that. So after the class, they were asked to go home and blog about this in English. I think this is a perfect marriage of technology and instructional intent to get them writing in English. So I'm going to show you the happy blog of Cheesecake on the next screen. I want you to remember he's in another language and another alphabet. And for the sake of time, I'll recap that he is saying here, I have a better understanding of what an English class would look like, how it would be structured, the kinds of things you would cover. I am very weak in my presentation skills, and I still need to work on that. So we have instructor blog, student blog. What do you think of this? Okay. And Greg, I see a lot of stuff going on in chat. Am I missing anything big? Has anything gone by I need to?
Just a lot of people that are reaffirming what you're saying.
Okay. All right. Now, here's an example of how I was using a blog in 2010. I would probably choose a different tool for this now. In this case, I am just doing sort of an anticipatory post for my people. I'm doing a leadership class, and I just wanted them to think about something. And this is what we're going to be talking about on Tuesday. I'm not asking them to respond now. I'm saying, I want you to think about this. It's what we're going to talk about when I see you again. So just a bit of pre-work. It's not heavy. It's not hard to do. Just I want you to think about it. In supervisory training, there's an enormous issue with new people who are very confused with the distinction between influence and power. New supervisors very often think finally they can come in and make sweeping changes to everything, and it really doesn't go that way. So it's an interesting distinction. I just want them to think. I'm not asking for anything back. Now, nowadays I might do this on Facebook or I might tweet it. It depends on what platform we're using. But this example used a blog, so I thought I'd keep it. Now, I don't know that this is going to be an issue for you all, but does anybody here have concerns about the amount of writing you've been seeing in the examples? Is writing or literacy or, okay, because I work in a situation where about a third of our workforce, I mean, think about state government, all of state government. We have housekeepers, groundskeepers, food service workers. We have people who were not students in the first place, and there's no harm, no foul in that. We have people who are not really in their first language all the time. And so we also have senior managers who are never, ever going to sit down and write gut-wrenching reflective essays for Jane. Right? So if you're thinking about the limits the writing might impose, because really many of the social tools so far are very, very text-heavy. There's Twitter, there's Facebook, there with a lot of text comments, there's LinkedIn, which is almost all text, right? So when you're thinking about how to use these tools, remember what I said about images. I have a friend who's on a trip around the world with his family, and he's blogging, but he's not a very good writer because he's only 6 years old. So he posts pictures, he draws pictures of his day. His dad helps him manage the account. His dad vets the comments. He's thrilled that adult. And I'm going to talk about that. Leslie, give me a minute. We're going to look at wikis in a moment. Okay. So, you know, it doesn't have to be essays. It doesn't have to be traditional text. Pew Internet Research last year said that half of adults online are sharing their own images. So people have the phones, people have the cameras. It's become kind of a different thing now to ask people to do that. So don't limit yourself to thinking everything has to be a text assignment, right? Schools are using this a lot. In this instance, the kids are running the blog, and the instructor, the teacher, just looks over his shoulder. Parents have the password. You know, the thing about them is that they're 8 years old, and they're on their way to you, and they're used to this. So what are some things you can think of that might be useful as blog activities? And I'm gonna say this so I can keep up with the chat. I want people who are wearing orange to answer this one. People who are wearing orange today, right now, what can you think of that you might be able to do with blogs in your own practice? Did you get any ideas? Think about 23 things. Think about teaching English, where you've got teacher and student blogs. Think about where you could use a web page that allows for comments, images, links. Is nobody wearing orange, or do the orange people not have answers? How about people wearing, there we go. Sharing new developments. You could have a class site. Orange is not the new black. Share best practices. I have seen blogs used very well for class notebooks. I'm going to show you maybe something that would work better, way to ask for help. All right. Think about things where there's writing that commenting on it. Okay. All right, let's move on because we've got some people who ask about this in particular. Let's talk about wikis. How is a wiki different from a blog? What's the difference? You know, I'm getting a lot of yes but comments, and I'm not actually sure why some of you were here. I mean, the topic is social media for trainers, and I'm obviously going to be a proponent of that. I'm not going to argue. You know, I use it. I find it successful. Okay, so generally, the people who are answering this are correct. Generally, it's more collaborative. When you look at a wiki typically has a number of authors, or everybody who is part of the collaborative effort has access to the wiki. You can, again, moderate it. You can password protect it. You can be notified of changes. I will warn you, this is a very appealing feature to people. It's one of the reasons that they choose a wiki. But about the 10,000th time you get an email that a comma's been changed, you get over that need. And you know, it's that everybody with access can edit, where very much a blog is more like a web page that people can comment on. A wiki is much more a collaborative tool, and some folks are a little bit afraid of that. I will say I've been using them for years, and I've never had a problem with something inappropriate or having to go back and fix a wiki, or somebody, you know, tearing up somebody else's work. It doesn't really happen. And you can see that some of you are already commenting about wikis being so great for group work. I would say the simplest form of a wiki nowadays is Google Docs, if you're familiar with that. That's kind of the simplest version, is a shareable document that everybody can write on at the same time. And I would agree with what Cindy Church is saying about they're great for group work and they're great for helping people access stuff. So if you're trying to choose, I would think more about blogs in terms of publishing and reflective work, and more about wikis in terms of projects and collaborative work. It really depends on what you can do and what you have access to and what your organization and your students will put up with. But I would say if you're trying to make a choice, that this is the distinction, is that a wiki is more a collaborative tool. Here's an example of someone who's using a wiki to host a course. And you can see here, unlike the blog, it has different pages. It looks a little bit more like a website. You can see the navigation to the left that looks a bit more like a traditional a website with the links and what have you. And because people have editing rights, let's say that this professor has divided the students up into 3 groups. This group has been assigned a James Joyce something. And they can work on this together. Those 3 students can go in and edit, can add each other's stuff, can change each other's stuff, can comment on each other's work, and then the rest of the class can see it. So they can work together on something in a single space. Rather than just add comments to each other, they can actually build this. And then you can add in some links. Again, he's hosting this traditional course, so it has stuff you would be used to seeing. Now here's another example. This is also from the library world. It is the Library Best Practices Wiki, which if you're a librarian, you can send a note from your organization with your domain name, and they will give you a password so you can go in. And so this is a table of contents. Somebody started this a number of years ago with very few items, and over the years it has expanded and been added to. So anyone with something they'd like to share can go in and add to one of the items, or can talk about what they're doing in their own libraries. Libraries got hit very hard in the economic downturn a few years ago. Libraries closed, branches got closed, hours got cut, librarians were let go. The people who developed 23 things were both let go, by the way. They've gone elsewhere, but they were both cut, which is a shame. So anyone with information to support library best practices can go in and add items. You would see stuff like this is how this is a fundraiser we're having. Here's a parade we had in the community. Here's an initiative we're doing with kids. Libraries suddenly realized that people go to Barnes & Noble and hang out all day drinking coffee and not buying books. So guess what libraries here have started doing? Public libraries, not school libraries. Yep. They've started offering coffee bars. Guess whose coffee bars they are? Guess who's helping with it? Yeah, oh yeah. And you know, I just sort of see the librarians of my childhood rolling in their graves at the thought that people are in the libraries running around with lattes and scones and stuff. I'm sure it's exactly what they were afraid of. So anybody with access can go in and edit this. So comparing that to a blog, people who were wearing socks today, what ideas do you have for using a wiki as opposed to a blog? Or if you thought about a blog earlier, are you thinking wiki now? Job contents, developing procedures, raffle prizes, facts. One of the things I do with wikis is, because there's always a note taker in everything I do, I always have note takers in classes, I set up a Google Doc and I give them access to it, and I ask my note takers if they would all take their notes on the Wiki Doc, and then we'll all have it. They can take turns if they like. They can do some private if they'd rather, but that way we all get it. I saw somebody say planning a baby shower, and that's not entirely a joke. I had a friend who had spent a couple of years trying to get her coworkers to use wikis, get them to, and of course they didn't want to. And one day they were really struggling actually with planning a baby shower. She set up a wiki for them with a page for logistics and a page for decorations and a page for food and a page for invitations and stuff, and they got it. So sometimes you just need to figure out how you can solve a problem to get the technology accepted, and now, of course, they use them all the time. I like a course notebook. I teach the same course sometimes year after year. Sometimes we have different iterations of a course as we go through time here at my workplace, and so a course notebook that everybody helps build and maintain is a great way for me to have a record of what went on in the class, because everything's a little different. You can teach the same syllabus 100 times, but the class is different, the dynamics are different, questions or problems are different, and I like that a whole lot, working on a group project. And again, those of you, I've seen SharePoint come up in chat a couple of times. Those of you with SharePoint is a suite very much like Microsoft Office, and SharePoint includes these tools. There are blogs, there are wikis. They bought Yammer. That's part of SharePoint now. So if you have SharePoint but you aren't aware of those features or they weren't turned on, you might want to check on that. You're welcome, Deborah. Check on that. And Greg, did I miss anything in chat? I need to check in because there's a lot of people, and people are, I appreciate it, very busy talking.
Jane, someone asked, what are some alternatives to Google Docs that you had mentioned?
Well, there's Google Docs is a simple collaborative shareable document. Office 365 is supposed to have some of these features, but I have Office 365, but nobody around me does, so I haven't been able to try them. But some of the free wiki tools are PBWorks, which I've used a lot. I've been very happy with. Wiki Spaces. These things change all the time, by the way. The last time I checked, these were all still around. I mean, I think you could Google free wiki and just see what you come up with. I use PBWorks for the George Mason class because I like it better than I like the wikis that Blackboard has these days.
Right.
And I've never had any problems or complaints with it. I'm not asking people to spill their guts and write their social security numbers, just so you know, but we're doing class assignments, and it seems to be fine. And what I do with them is that they have a big project that's due the last week of class. They have to build basically a portal that incorporates a number of social tools, and it's hard to keep people on task, and it's hard to keep people from waiting till the very last minute to do that, and you can't with this project. So at the beginning of the semester, I set up a wiki. I give each student his or her own page. And as we go through the semester, that's where they update what they're working on, and they have milestones they have to meet and answers to questions they have to do. And so I can go through the wiki and very quickly scan everybody's work and make sure everybody's kind of up to speed and on target so that they'll get the project done.
Jane, here's some other questions related to wikis. One is, who's the best person or category of person to pick as the administrator? Do you split it up?
I think that's a great question. What I usually do is I am the administrator, but I will sometimes assign a blog author so that different people are in charge of the blog starting every week. I will usually, for a wiki, have a backup admin so that if anything happens to me, somebody else can go in and fix it. But with a wiki, you can give everybody authoring access. That doesn't mean you're giving them admin access, right? So you can give everybody ability to write a page, to upload their stuff, to correct each other's stuff, but at some point if you need to step in and overwrite or revoke anything, you still have the rights to that as an admin. I tend to not appoint a lot of admins. I tend to appoint authors or other editors, but I don't tend to give up admin rights to a lot of people because, you know, it's like giving somebody power of attorney. They can go sell your house.
Right.
So there's that. But I very much like the idea of giving people, deputizing people. You're responsible for the blog post for the next week. You're responsible for checking the wiki and giving people feedback. I saw that Rowan asked about using the discussion feature. I don't use it a lot because I'm already using discussion boards elsewhere. If I specifically say use the comment area to comment on Joan's project, they will do that. But to be honest with you, I haven't had a need to use it much. They will use it if I ask. But you know, one thing we haven't said today is, especially if you've got people already using a pretty big tool like a Blackboard or a Moodle, there's only so much we can ask them to do. There are only so many shiny objects that they can attend to. So I tend to not ask them to go 55 different places. I choose the tools I need. I try to limit them. And not just send them hither and yon. So choosing, you know, where they're going to discuss so that everybody knows where to be, I think, helps. Facebook, you know, there really isn't a good equivalent to Facebook yet. I know that people have built internal stuff. I've seen them. Our LMS has one. I've seen what people have done. And the truth is, Facebook makes Facebook very easy to use. You know, it's got huge recognition. People fuss about it, and they fuss about the privacy, but the truth is it's very easy to use. So I can. I saw a question about PBWorks. I think Yammer's a great, just because I don't, Yammer's a great alternative to Twitter, which we haven't gotten to yet, so give me a minute. Yammer's not really a wiki. Karen, I have people who ask me not to link up Facebook with the other tools, but I don't know. That's a good point. You don't. Generally, I have a link. Say I'm in Blackboard, I have a wiki link on the Blackboard site that they can go straight from Blackboard to the wiki from there. They don't have to hop through Facebook. So yeah, if you can make it easier, but sometimes people don't like the Facebook authentication. If I can just get them to the wiki easier and they log in one time and can stay there, I think that you make a good point. You don't want people to have to keep up with 100 URLs, but make sure that's in front of them so they can get to it. This is an example of a Facebook page, which is basically works like a web page. I can post updates. I can post, you know, I have books that are tech-based. They go out of date very quickly. So it's a really quick way for me to just post updates and get a few comments. It works very much like a blog in that regard. But I'm really only using it, you know, as a sort of as a web page replacement. You can also use a Facebook page to host a course. And to the point I saw earlier, you can assign other administrators. So in this case, I have one of my students posting content, helping me generate content. In this instance, the topic for the week was going to be teleworking, which freaks state government out, freaks taxpayers out. Everybody's worried that people, and they have reason to worry sometimes, about people teleworking. And one of my students found this great first-person blog by this woman through the living room window who is a teleworker who works from home and blogs about the other side of that, the isolation of it, how you organize your day, how difficult it can be to get away from your work when it's in your house with you, needing to set up schedules to meet with people and be social. So it was very interesting, different perspective, and he found it. I didn't. Sam found it. So you can use a Facebook page that way. All right. I have used tools like a Facebook for things like helping people introduce themselves. If you're asking for a picture, it doesn't always have to be a picture of themselves or their house or something personal. In this case, I asked people I had not met to just go on the Facebook, in a Facebook group I had set up. I said, would you just introduce yourself and, you know, show me something. Give me a quote or a movie title or show a picture of something that tells me why you chose the work you did or why your work resonates with you. And this is what one of the law enforcement officers posted to a bunch of strangers. I don't know how many of you ever worked with law enforcement. I was the training director for the Justice Department some years back. And this is a great deal of disclosure for a cop, to say something personal like this, okay? All right, so I see that people are saying you can't use Facebook, you can use LinkedIn. I don't get that because it's had so many security hacks, but okay. How could you do this with LinkedIn? How could you do this with a blog? How could you do this with a wiki? You don't have to have Facebook. But my point was more people are more comfortable sharing stuff. You be careful what you ask for. And in this case, Facebook makes Facebook very easy to use. I would see what I could do to get that changed. I didn't tell you all this. I don't know whether I should. I work for state government. We have 85,000 employees. The governor said 5 years ago that she expected us to use social media, and nothing is locked down, nothing is blocked, and we don't have a policy. It's been 5 years. We have 85,000 people. She didn't tell all 85,000 of us to go be on Twitter all day long, but we deal with it like we would deal with somebody abusing the telephone, you know, and we're still in business. I think that these fears are a little bit unfounded. Yeah. So I haven't really had to have most of the fights. So here's what Richard Burns says. He's a teacher. He teaches high school students. And this goes back to, I think, Ms. Church's, I think it was Ms. Church who made the comment earlier about people not wanting to go everywhere. You know, the difference with the Facebook or a Facebook-like tool, which some of you have, is you can have images, you can have videos, you can have chat, you can have the groups. LinkedIn doesn't let you have quite that much functionality. That might be why they let you use it, but you're really kind of cheating if you can't have some of the more robust functions. I don't really have anything against LinkedIn. My population isn't there. I think you see a lot of LinkedIn use with people who are involved in sales, for instance, or people who need to network a lot or make a lot of connections. I don't really need that in my workplace. So, you know, I get it if that's what you're, yeah, you can say the same about a lot of stuff. I find Facebook groups, and you could do this with LinkedIn. You'd have some limitations. You could do this other places. They're great for alumni groups. They're great to, you know, students meet each other and they want to stay together and they like the content or they like a topic, but they want you to keep some email list for them, and it never works out. So I like to set up, you know, alumni groups, and I can feed new graduates into it. They go in knowing a few people, they meet more people. You know, they may choose to stay, they may choose not, they may outgrow the group, but it's a place for them to go, and I find that that can be a really quick, easy solution. I'm not threatening anybody else's content, I'm not stepping on other people's stuff, right? And it's a great way to help them stay in touch without it all being on me. You can find really interesting conversations going on. One of the big conversations in workplace training is whether ethics can be taught. Many of us say no. If you didn't get it when you were in kindergarten, you're probably not going to get it when you're 40. And, you know, we drag people to this stuff. We beat on them to get them to mandatory training when really left to their own, they're off having conversations about it somewhere else, right? And, you know, I've already said this. You can do a lot of stuff with Facebook, and it makes it easy, and I think that's one of the issues is whatever you want to use, don't make it something so hard and so clunky that people give up. And I've already shown you kind of examples of this as I went on. Do I have any Twitter yes, and Facebooks? Everything I've shown you today so far is free. And do I have any Twitter in my group? Because I'm a Twitter girl. You follow me. That's good. That's good. And for those of you, somebody asked this earlier, Yammer is similar. We're talking about microblogging. Yammer is a good product that you can use internally. Social text is a good product. You know, I would just say in my case, in my world, I need to talk to people beyond my organization. If I could only talk to people right here or right in North Carolina, I really have no reason to. I'm the only one who does what I do. If I couldn't get into the bigger world, there's really not much point for me to be on most of these tools. We can message internally a little, but that's not really the biggest bang for me. Yeah, we're getting Link soon. I like Twitter because it forces you to get to the point. I don't really like the multi-day threaded discussions that go on forever. So if you're not really familiar with Twitter, you're trying to choose it as compared to another tool. You know, it is not for long, structured, reflective, deep thinking. You can do chats, but there are limitations, and you have to just sort of learn to drink from the fire hose. These are the people I follow. This is what my feed looks like at any given moment. You know, I follow people who talk about learning, e-learning, training and development, writing, books, sometimes people like that. But if you want to use Twitter to support activities, you know, just need to remember you've got to stay within that 140 character limit for yourself, and you have to give people stuff they can answer in that same space. And I would say the same for Yammer. You don't have quite the lockdown on the character limit there, but you also don't want people having to write paragraph after paragraph. And you see that Lana is saying that she loves to get links to blogs, articles, and websites that the people she follows directs her to good stuff. I think the challenge here is learning how to manage your feed and learning to choose and pick and curate and filter a little bit better. Here's an example of an activity done in Twitter where the social learning question of the day account every morning would post a social learning question and people could come in and answer. If you need to communicate with a lot of people, for me, Twitter solves my problem of building a personal learning network. Twitter solves the problem of getting a quick answer to a problem. Twitter solves the problem of being able to reach a very diverse audience very, very quickly. Now, you do get back what you put in. If you only follow 2 people and you tweeted 2 times and you lock down your account, you're not going to have that experience. I find it a very good investment, especially in terms of my professional growth. But for some of us, it's reaching the learners where they are. Again, certain parts of your workforce or your user base may be very active on a Twitter or another similar channel where they're not very active on a LinkedIn. You know, it just depends. You know, it is a matter of choosing the right tool. Now, if you're new to Twitter, I would recommend that you find a chat that interests you. There's 600 regularly scheduled chats. I help facilitate Learn Chat almost every Thursday night. There's an Ed Chat that is ongoing. It's not really scheduled at a given time. You can pop in any time. There's a blog chat. For those of you who are involved or are parents of kids in K-12, there's a wonderful chat called PT Chat. It's a parent-teacher chat run by a principal whose burning passion in life is figuring out how to help parents and schools be more connected to each other. It is what he gets up in the morning on fire about. It's PT Chat, and it's great. So I would find a chat. It helps you kind of see how it all works and see who you might want to follow, who you might not want to follow. And it can help you, give you ideas if you are using smaller channels like an internal, a Yammer or a social text for how you might use that in what you're doing. This is about a minute of Learn Chat. It's a transcript. So you have to learn to drink from the fire hose and not attend to everything and respond to everybody and say every single thing. So be thinking about short answers. What might you use Twitter, Yammer, social text for? Thank you, Melissa. Just in time stuff, in the moment stuff. I love book clubs on Twitter. I love being able to sort of manage how much, you know, we always have talkers. We always have the paragraph-long responders. I can manage them better here. It's a great way to help connect students with, or yourself with experts or with authors. There are a number of fairly prominent authors like Peter Block. Margaret Atwood is pretty well known on Twitter, and she'll answer you. You know, you can interact with some of these folks. But just remember to limit it, that you need to limit the tweet and that they need to limit the response. And, of course, you know, an advantage here is that things are so easily available via mobile. The YouTubes and the Facebooks and the Twitters and even the LinkedIns, everything is so much easier to get to now, and it's much more mobile. But when you start thinking about things that are unique, that we couldn't do in the traditional classroom. You know, I know some of you said that you find online more limiting, but the truth is I couldn't have the governor come in real time and say hello to my students before. She before him and now him, we're not going to get in the car and drive over here. I'm giving people more realistic practice. If they're going to be interacting online, to be able to help them practice online. Okay. Oh yeah, I love Instagram. I think Instagram's kind of like Twitter with pictures. I like Instagram a lot. But, you know, Facebook owns Instagram now. I keep waiting to see what that's going to cause. And I think in a year, if we did this thing again, there'd be some new tool. I like Pinterest lately. I'm thinking Pinterest has the biggest potential, and I like a new product called Snap Guide. You know, the point is, and I see somebody ask about, I don't know that I would call Skype a social media tool. Skype is more a conferencing tool, but I like it a lot. And I use it for chat, or I did for a long time. I really think the tools themselves have different uses. It really depends on what you're trying to do, what you think would help you meet your instructional goals, what you think your learners will like and will do. And the tools will all change tomorrow. You know that. Somebody will buy somebody will, or tool. The governor has come in a couple of times via Google Hangout for me, Tara. The former governor did. I haven't done it with the current one. He hasn't been in office very long. But, you know, we've been here before. We go through this anytime we try to do something. And sometimes the things that we say are so great is exactly what we get resistance about. This is what I think happened the day telephones came to the workplace. So what is video capable? I'm sorry, I don't know what you were asking about. Tara. I agree, Karen. You want a tool that you like. And as far as how do I keep on top of it, I find all this interesting. It's what I like to do. It's my job. And I need to be where my people are. And the truth is most of my people are on Facebook. I need to know where they are. We have less interest in some of the other tools just because of my workforce. I have people come into Google Hangouts via, usually they're on an iPad, but you know there may be a webcam plugged into the camera. Yeah. But I'm liking Google Hangouts for real-time stuff lately. But you know the truth is, for those of us who are dealing with blocks, most of us are circumventing them, and this is what I have to say to people. There's no such thing as digital immigrants and digital natives. Sharon Foley, don't. That's a whole different webinar. I think the issue is, can you solve a problem? Back to my example of the baby shower wiki thing. If you solve somebody's problem, they're much more likely to be amenable to a tool than getting in their face and saying, you have to try this, and this is so cool, and this is so new. You know, what is it that they are struggling with? In most cases, people in the workplace are having trouble finding information they need, finding a person they need. They get frustrated when they finish a project and find out someone else has already done most of the legwork. They get frustrated when they finish a project and find out it was already done and it wasn't anywhere they could access. So figuring out how we can help make their lives easier is, I think, the bigger challenge than just saying, oh my gosh, we have to use Facebook here, everybody, right? Right? So next, I want you to be thinking about not just content that invites and allows others to contribute, but how you are inviting that. What we can do to bring other people into conversations, what we can do to include them. Have you got an idea from today? We're coming up at the end of our time. And I saw there was a question about ASTD. I'll tell you about it as we finish. You got an idea? Okay. If you're interested, I would say the bigger thing to care about than the technology are areas that we don't spend much time in. Most of us look at social anthropology, social psychology, read up on communities and why people interact online, why they share. Because I think that's a bigger issue than just picking a tool or finding out today how you log into one this or that, because that will change. You know, take a look at some things that are outside of your field. It's what John Seeley Brown calls increasing your surface area. So for tomorrow, I want you to think about broader things than a course, than a particular program, than a particular this week, this year. You know, how can we develop cultures of learning? How can we get learners more involved with us day to day and not treat us like we are just the purveyors of these events, which, you know, unfortunately we are, and they know us as that. You know, everything doesn't have to be us imparting knowledge. I don't like the anonymity, Karen. I ask for people to use their real names, and I don't interact on Twitter with people if I don't know who they really are. I think that it makes for authenticity, and if people are that afraid to talk, there's either a problem with the culture or a problem with what the person is saying. But there's a good deal of literature on why people share, and I think it's in your materials. If it's not, I can add it. It's Faraj and Wasco, or Wasco and Faraj. And we're at the end of our time. I'm Jane. I'm with the state of North Carolina. This is the new book, and I'm doing a session on this at ASTD. We're launching the book May 1. The ASTD session is May 6, so I'll have copies of it there. It's really just about how we can share our work and make our work more explicit, and how we can show people not just what we do, but how we get things done, and perhaps make everybody else's life a little easier. And my hidden agenda on that is get rid of staff meetings. So if you want to find me online, I am always on Facebook. I am always on Twitter. You can always find me there. I have a column in Learning Solutions. It runs the first Tuesday of every month. And I've enjoyed today. I hope you found something useful you could take away. And I want to thank Greg for having me. And we had a lot of trouble scheduling this. I had to cancel on him, and he was very kind to me. So thanks very much, Greg.
Jane, thank you for a great webinar.
Sure.
Really appreciate it.
Sure.
I see lots of great comments coming in. Everyone, I want to thank you for attending. We will make the information available to you, the websites that Jane had mentioned. Additionally, we will make the recording from today's webinar available to you in about a week or two. We know that your time is valuable, so we really appreciate your decision to spend some of it with us. You will receive a brief 8-item evaluation via email. Your feedback is important to us, so we hope you'll complete it. Until then, this is Greg Williams for the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC, saying thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks.
I have the best comment of my whole career from H.S. Coddington. I'm taking a screenshot of it and keeping it forever. I don't know if he or she is still online, but I'm sending you money for that. Oh. I now know 2 Marvettes. That may be the only 2 in the whole world, and I know them both. I'm excited about that. Yeah, I like yes and, Bernie. I agree with you. All right. Well, thank you, Greg. I guess we'll be in touch afterward. I've got another meeting to get to, but thank you for having me. We had a good, fun bunch, huh?